Hello everyone. So today I would like to share a perspective on what conditional being is, because many times we're not objective about how we behave with other people, and especially in relationships. So we tend to look outside, project, reflect, instead of having ourselves an objective perspective. So what happens when we have the conditional being? How does this conditional being play out in our world, in our relationship? So when we are still conditional, limited, and lack clarity, this simply reflects in our inability to understand when to give and when to obtain, when to act and when to be, when to express ourselves unconditionally and when to stay silent. So as long as we have these confusions in our lives, our life is somewhat the reflection of these confusions and this imbalance or misalignment that we are carrying within, or the emanation of which we are. Because again, our life is just the external projection of what we are, and whether we try to object it or hide away from it, it is as it is. We can't hide away from it. And so it proves us on and on through our relationships, through the way the world also sees us, what we truly are. And so in a way, the world can be of a valuable nature for our spiritual evolution if we can understand it this way, because we can see that all the people around are reflecting something within ourselves. And it doesn't mean that they always reflect it properly, because they also may, emit their own traumas or express their own limited perception of reality. But at least it teaches us different kind of lessons which we usually don't see. We pay attention at nagging, at criticism, but we don't look at the core. And the core is our proper distance with each and every element within the projected reality. So it's very important to establish this proper energetic distance. And so when you say that you're healing, or when you're truly on a path of self-healing, self-realization, gaining clarity, spiritual knowledge, it has to reflect on the quality of life and the quality of your relationship with the projected reality, where you clearly see and define for yourself, not as a traumatic response to someone else's action or reaction, but as a part of your own wisdom, clarity, and understanding. So you start understanding how to give, what to give, to which degree to give. So you see the potential of people, groups you're interacting with, of how your energy flow has to go there. And it's not that you have to go into this calculative mode. It's just a natural outcome of your realization. It has to be. Because if you are really in that mode of clarity, you have to understand that these people, let's say, are able to take only 20 to 50% of what you're trying to convey. So you are not trying to push more or overflow or flood them emotionally. So you give only that or even less. So in this case, you naturally start understanding how to regulate that energy exchange, and yet you remain authentic, or you go further and further back to your authenticity. You're restoring your authenticity through this process of healing and self-realization. Because if you're whatever you do spiritually, or you don't do anything, you are and cultivating some, whatever it is, it has to result in alignment, yoga, self-healing, and that clarity which emanates through your being. And when you gain clarity, the more clarity you gain, the more authentic you become. The less you calculate or logically assume or judge, and the more you flow and express yourself naturally, because you see instantly how much you can give, and whether this relationship is based on a proper foundation, equal give and take or not. And so when you gain this clarity and heal, you do not respond to the reality from the trauma point of view, because the traumatic response is dissolved. That's what healing is or supposed to be. And so when there is no traumatic response, there is more of a wise response or an aligned response, where you don't take things personally, or you no longer take things personally, but you clearly see the limitations of others, and your actions are based on that wisdom and compassion at the same time. But it's not an involved compassion, or the compassion as a result of trauma. It's a compassionate detachment, where you can see that people have what they have, or they are what they are, and this is in their hands to either continue that way or to change it. So you, through that wisdom that you've gained through this process of self-healing and self-realization, you abstain from interference. That's why the majority of wise people do not interfere. They allow people to experience their karmic self to the T, so that they can learn, so that they can dissolve these traumas. And no one can help anyone with their karmic experiences, because our life is nothing but the projection of that limitation, or whatever you call as karma, karmic experience, the limitation of consciousness, in other words, through our bodily existence, through our interactions, reactions, and so on and so forth. So we cannot see our corruption unless we interact or relate to the projected reality, within the projected reality, where we relate to certain elements that give us a feedback, so to speak. And so through this feedback, we start realizing more about ourselves. But it doesn't mean that now we've already changed. So that is up to us. That is a free will, where we can make an effort or we can let it be. And again, the more clarity we gain, the more we understand how we can dissolve our corruption and refine ourselves through the being. When we surrender the traumatic response into the being, when we surrender our imbalanced emotions into that equanimous being, into that blissful being, into that silence within ourselves. And we take time to respond, not because we judge or calculate, but because we naturally see that our response is not going to change anything. So when we are unconditioning, if I may say so, ourselves, when we are healing and dissolving our trauma, we simply start establishing healthy relationships with the projected reality and its limited elements. And so our energy is not wasted. We do not overflow or hold back. We somehow naturally understand each element at that moment we interact with it, at that moment of now. And we are naturally not assuming or judging that element at the moment we interact with it, as if it were the entirety of that element, or the completeness, because we can see each and every element of this reality only right now as it is expressed now. For example, if we are witnessing rain, we cannot say that our existence is always raining. Or when we observe sunshine, it's not that our existence is always sunny. So the same applies to people. We tend to assume and judge by the one or by momentary situations. We need to deal with momentary situations, but only through communication and proper authentic self-expression, we can actually understand people, relationships, situations much better. And so wise people who have been on the path of deconditioning, disillusionment, unconditioning, whatever you call it, they gain this clarity because they see people and situations beyond the momentary expression. And so because of that clarity, their reaction is not based on instant traumatic response, or it's not a reaction, but it's an expression valid at that point in that situation. That's how you may say that someone is acting out of unconditional being. And sometimes these actions cannot be understood by the conditional beings, because conditional beings are reactive. A being who has natural clarity, wisdom, compassion, and humility does not have that up and down emotionally anymore, because all that emotional charge is dissolved, it's surrendered to the higher being, and they are realigned. So that's how they can see the conditionings of the other beings without judgment or compassion. And so the more you uncondition yourself, the less reactive you become, and the more you understand the amount of energy that is required for each and every element within your reality. And so you cultivate yourself naturally, thus giving to the projected reality and its elements only that amount of energy that is required. That's why all your relationships start balancing, you start establishing healthy boundaries naturally, because you respect yourself. That alignment within is the self-love, which is not based on the limited self or ego, but which is based on natural understanding of your higher being and deep surrender into that higher being, which emanates within and without us contentment, wisdom, and generosity. But at the same time, this generosity or this unconditional love and contentment are not overflowing or suffocating other people, because a wise being is supposed to see clearly, instantly, how much that other being or situation requires of their energy, of their emotional involvement. So it's all again about the emotional involvement. The more imbalanced and traumatized we are, unhealed we are, the more imbalanced our emotional response to reality will be. The more balanced we are, the more we come out of contentment and equanimity, and our emotional response is the same. It's equanimous, it's more neutral, but yet you are fully there and deeply understanding the situation. And until we have that direct experience, it's difficult to really understand, because it has to be the direct experience rather than trying to imagine and speculate how it should be or should be. I hope it helps people to understand, some people to understand this, the way we are when we are refining and healing ourselves, and how things change in the perspective for those who truly healing and refinement, because everything will change. The reactions will change, the attitudes will change, and the reality will be of a more aligned and equanimous and content one, rather than the reality of trauma that is so valid for many people at this point, even those souls who wish to heal, wish to realize their spiritual essence, and yet because of this trauma and emotional imbalances, they cannot tap to that which has always been there, which is always there and will be there, their inner self. And so in order for that to happen, we simply need to refocus and understand that there's nothing more important than us being within our mind and consciousness, and our body fully, with full awareness being there in our body. Then we truly start the process of self-healing and cultivation. Thank you very much. Remember to subscribe, and if anyone needs personal insight into their situation, you may always book a session with me or ask your questions through YouTube comments. Thank you very much to all who do so. Thank you. Bye.